Okay, welcome to the Iratus Complication, a Stargate Atlantis rewatch podcast. This is between myself, Michael, and my co-host Grant.
Hello.
We are Stargate fans. Apparently, as discussed before this episode started recording, I am much more of a obsessive than my co-host here.
Well, you because of who I am, I have trouble finishing things, even things that I adore. So, as far as Stargate SG-1 goes, I have watched it in air quotes 3 times. Once as it was airing, when I would be on the floor sitting in front of my TV every Friday night on channel 64, where I lived at the time, was the sci-fi channel, and I would be watching SG-1. I don't know, I think high school hit or something, and I wasn't able to keep up with it as it was ending. But it was the first show. Stargate SG-1 was the first show I ever actually watched. Like, if it was on, I went and I watched it. The first show I watched religiously. The first show I was at all intentional about catching when it aired. And then obviously Atlantis would come out, and I was doing the same thing at that time. I remember they aired SG-1 and then Atlantis right afterwards. I think for 3 seasons of Atlantis.
Yeah, I think the timeline lines up that way.
Yeah. So I adore the show. I rewatched SG-1 and started to getting into Atlantis, watching it that same way, going back and forth. That was probably 4 or 5 years ago. And then just a few months ago, I restarted. I began another watch through of SG-1, and I'm on season 2, episode 16 or somewhere around there. Since I've had that experience at least, well, twice now of doing the back and forth with SG-1 and Atlantis, I think we'll be okay to get started.
Yeah, I am not as old of a fan. So when I was in high school, I, on a whim, rented one of the Atlantis DVDs from the library.
Nice.
I was fascinated by it, but obviously renting it from a library didn't exactly have the entire collection or anything like that.
Right.
So I was very much lost, had no context. Later on, years would go by, and in college I would watch the Stargate movie and most of SG-1, and then because Netflix and Hulu and stuff were starting to show up as places to watch things. So then I managed to watch all the way through SG-1 and Atlantis.
So that was in college for you for the first time?
Yeah. Well, I had seen like preliminary episode, like again, renting it from the library in high school, right?
Yeah.
Just because I was like, I will watch anything for sci-fi. That is not a good road to go down, because there's a lot of bad sci-fi out there.
True.
But I found the military aspects of it kind of cool, and
Yeah.
but I didn't watch it religiously, and then I got into it, and the way I consume media is all at once, all in one go.
Okay. That's
so I watched all the way through SG-1 and then all the way through Atlantis. I didn't do the go back and forth thing. My brain doesn't work that way. Like, I know the two are related and they were interleaved at the time, but I just don't do that. It's like when I went back and said, you know what, Buffy is an influential series, I need to watch Buffy. I watched all the way through Buffy and I didn't watch a single episode of Angel. And then I was like, well, I know there's this companion series that ties in with the later seasons, so I'll go watch Angel. And I couldn't get through like 3 episodes of Angel because I hate that series. I don't know what it is. I think it's the brooding nature of David Boreanaz.
Sure.
That's neither here nor there for this podcast. But the point is, I don't do the interleaving. I kind of watch it in one go, right? Like, what if I really only watched this show and didn't care about the other one? And I think one of the points that we can get to later is that the nice thing about all of the different Stargate series, and this is including the trash can fire that is Universe,
which I have not seen a lick of.
You might like it. I don't. I find the whole space soap opera it's cringe to me personally. It might be
Gotcha.
It might be your favorite thing. Don't knock it till you try it, right?
Sure.
I think the thing that I like about the original Stargate and then Stargate Atlantis is that you can watch the original Stargate without ever having watched the Stargate movie, and if you watch it all the way through from start to finish, you're not lost.
Yeah.
What I like about Stargate Atlantis is if you've never seen SG-1, you can watch it from the beginning to the end and never be lost. And
Yes,
the same
that's
is true for Stargate Universe, right? Of course, you're not going to get every little subtlety, every little reference, right? But for the big plot points, you're not going to be completely lost. And I think that's a beautiful thing with the series is that you can watch it independently.
Yeah. I agree. There are some. It's mostly just little emotional impact moments and just being like, oh, hey, Sam Carter's over here in Atlantis in this episode, and then you watch the SG-1 episode just before that, it kind of showed her leaving, or there's something like that. There are a couple times where it's like one-to-one event happens back on Earth, and then boom.
And there's I know you haven't watched all the way through the Atlantis series, but
true. Yes.
There's an episode later on that I will tease for you. The other thing is we're going to try and avoid spoilers for later on in the series. Not always going to be possible, but we're going to try. Anyway, so a little teaser of an excellent episode. Hopefully you're aware of Ronan Dex, which is Jason Momoa's character.
Yeah, my first introduction to Jason Momoa.
Yeah, he actually he portrays the tough guy in the series.
No.
Not in the beginning. I think he's in the second or third season is when he gets introduced. I want to say second season.
That feels right. Second feels more right.
So the one episode that I will watch on repeat if I have to is the Atlantis episode where they have Christopher Judge playing Teal'c and Jason Momoa playing Ronan Dex fighting Wraith for like 30% of the episode. It is the best episode of all time, and I can't wait to get there with you.
But Teal'c comes to Atlantis? I did not. Okay, that's blowing my mind. I don't think I reached that point. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. It really is boggling to me. Quick aside, we'll get started right after this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, I can't stress enough how important Stargate as a franchise is to me, and it really is a testament to how difficult I find it to finish shows that I have not completed either SG-1 or Atlantis ever. That's mind-boggling to me. But I haven't, so yeah.
All right, so before we get officially started, here's the tentative structure. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to watch the episode, 2 episodes at a time per podcast episode, just so that we don't spend 2 years doing this. Because it is 100 episode long. For those who are going to yell at us about using weird pressings, we are using the Stargate Atlantis, the complete series, 2020 VEI Entertainment Incorporated pressing. There are some scenes in this that are different from like what's hosted on Hulu, for example. Notice that one, doing some rewatching. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and watch the episode. We're going to give commentary during the episode. So we'll tell you when we're starting, and then you can sync up your video to our commentary. And then afterwards, we'll do a little wrap up, and we'll kind of discuss our overall thoughts, what our favorite moments are, that sort of thing. All right. So we are starting the episode at the 0 time code, starting now. Okay, right off the bat, I just want to say that I love this scene because it establishes everything you need to know about Atlantis, the puddle jumpers.
I know. I'm shocked that we're. Oh, okay. I was like, whoa. How are we already seeing a puddle jumper?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Look at the drama here already.
Okay. Fun fact: they got the exact same actress who was the frozen ancient in Antarctica. This is a direct relation to the SG-1 episode. Yeah. Now, the great thing about this scene and what that it establishes Atlantis has a shield, it's a giant city, and it flies. These are all big points that you need to get to your audience right away, that if you've watched SG-1, there's some implication of stuff like this, right?
This is sick.
I mean, some of the CG for being 2004, it stands up.
Throughout it, the visual effects in this show, even in early SG-1, they knew their limitations, which was a huge amount of it. But even when they did use CG, we're talking the late 90s on a television program, on the Sci-Fi Network, no less. And and I'm always impressed by how effective it is, even if it's not perfect.
Yeah.
of the missiles. So there is a recasting of Weir from her first appearance on SG-1.
Yeah. In fact, if I remember correctly, the recasting to Tori Higginson actually showed up on the series before Atlantis starts.
Yes.
I think one of the keys for this scene, besides just explaining a whole bunch of stuff about Atlantis, is that it introduces you, at least visually, to each of the main cast of Atlantis expedition characters, right? So we've got Dr. Weir here, and then we've got Dr. McKay. Fun fact, actually, from the commentaries, when they were originally writing this, McKay was not part of it. Like, there was a different science officer, essentially. But I think having Dr. McKay as a holdover from SG-1, and especially his ability to grow from that role, is great.
Oh my God! Sorry, it was shocking seeing Daniel post haircut because he doesn't have it yet in SG-1.
Yeah, when he's doing his James Spader impression.
Yes. I just saw the episode in SG-1 that establishes 8 episode addresses.
That's the one where Jack goes to...
He meets the Asgard.
Gets the knowledge downloaded. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. This feels more like a movie.
I mean, essentially it is, because it's a full two-parter, right?
Right. But this is where you can tell, like, it's the
like 90% of this is shot in Vancouver, right?
Sure. Yeah, it is a Canadian show,
and
or Canadian American.
If I remember correctly, this is actually a glacier up in Canada.
This is great. I forgot that they ever interacted, and they're so similar in terms of their characterization.
I mean, but the important part is that they're distinct enough.
Yes,
right?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Okay, now we get introduced to my favorite character of all time.
Beckett?
I love Carson to the edges of the earth. I just love his character.
That's great. That's true, yeah.
Especially his later development. Like, I love McKay, I love Shepard, but I don't know.
No, you're not wrong. Beckett's
Dr. Beckett is just wonderful.
He's killer. The nervous Scotsman. Like, who would have thought? Oh, that digital zoom was
Sure, this scene shows us that, Shepard has a lot of awesome piloting ability because he can avoid one of these autonomous drones, but it also establishes, for those who haven't seen SG-1, what the hell these things are, right?
Yeah.
Because if you've seen SG-1, you're like, oh, it's the Antarctic weapons platform.
Oh, yeah. See, that was fuzzy for me, but yeah, there was that whole battle. And it also established he was listing all sorts of aircraft that he was trained in the
Mm-hmm.
previous scene, including the V-22 Osprey, which is pretty niche.
Yeah. I think he actually later on in the series will bring up the Osprey once more, in that it's a helicopter that you have to use your hands and feet to fly.
Mm-hmm.
Another good thing is that like in SG1, our point of view character, for lack of a better term, is Samantha Carter and George Hammond, right?
Yeah, George Hammond is constantly bewildered by everything happening at the base.
Yeah, and
I mean, he handles it, but yeah,
yeah, and Sam to an extent
Wow.
is the character who's never been through the gate before, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
and that's what Shepard represents for this series, and I think it gives the screenwriters a lot of excuse to have people explain stuff to Shepard.
yeah, which it is necessary, and
Mhm.
and you the more organically you can do that, the better. But sometimes you just need to make sure, like we said, this needs to be accessible if you've never seen SG1.
Yeah, and I think that's what gives it a lot better appeal.
Rainbow Sun frags. Sorry.
And now we have pretty much every major character from the Atlantis expedition, at least for the first season, right?
Yeah.
Introduced.
Yeah.
Because we met Peter earlier, who is the Walter stand-in in this series. Or I don't want to say stand-in, maybe, but you get my meaning.
For years, when there was scuttlebutt of an Uncharted movie happening, I really, really wanted Shepard here to play Nathan Drake.
Yeah, I think Joe Flanagan would fit in perfectly there.
Joe Flanagan.
I mean, he's a little old now.
Not anymore. Yeah, he's aged out, but unless we're talking Uncharted 4, but then you might as well just do Mal from Firefly. I can't remember
Nathan Fillion.
Nathan Fillion. Jesus Christ, yeah.
Look at all this wonderful exposition dump we're getting here between two characters that, Daniel obviously, but we know that Jack pays way more attention than he's implying here.
Yeah, but that's always his MO. Said. As if like most of the cast is Canadian. What'd you say?
I love all of O'Neill's one-liners, no matter where they are.
Oh, yeah.
Although this is my favorite one from this episode. I love how they're not afraid to give their characters extremely awkward moments.
Yes.
Just hide behind the chair, Carson.
Wow. Why doesn't Jack just build one again?
Yeah, right?
No, he lost a memory.
I think another thing that I like about the series is their willingness to make little jokes at other sci-fi series and and be like, basically, sci-fi exists in this realm, right?
Yes, yeah,
Because
yeah.
they're like Trek, and then they make some Star Wars references, you know.
Yes, yeah. That and the whole military backdrop really grounds it, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. One tiny detail I love about this scene is that the leg rest activates for Shepard, but not for Carson.
Yes. And then they also established that it happened immediately. He didn't have to focus at all.
Yeah.
All right, Oracle. Mm. Got him. Oh, he's an SG-1.
Yeah.
Different character. He's one of
Yeah.
the
I mean, there's
advanced. Yeah.
he's one of the Tolan. One of the things
Yes.
that I find interesting is that like Stargate has just a stable of actors, right?
Yeah.
That they constantly use and reuse, and I mean
Mm-hmm.
part of that is logistics, right?
Sure.
And it's kind of interesting to be like, wait a minute, you played another role.
But like it was like a decade prior. Or like 6 years prior.
How many hours have they probably used of that one clip of the entrance to Cheyenne Mountain?
You know, it's often from different angles, and there's different people walking in front of it. Like, it would be really easy to
But
use literally the
I
same
mean,
one every time.
it's you can tell it's just stock footage. Like I'm
Oh,
pretty sure
sure.
they probably used it in war games.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, bringing in I believe it's Robert Patrick, the Terminator. Well,
Yeah, Terminator
one
2,
of
Team
the
1000.
Terminators.
Amazing, dude.
Siler isn't getting exploded in this scene.
I just watched that episode, one of those episodes too.
Whenever he shows up, something bad is normally happening, and it's
That's true.
usually to him. I think another interesting part is that they do focus in this movie on the fact that it is multinational, right?
Yes, they all have the patches.
And even the fact that like,
Movie.
well, no, like roughly at this point in the series, I think we've heard Jack at least say once or twice that there'll be a Russian on SG-1 over his dead body, right?
Yeah.
And like,
I think by now SG-1 is multinational, but I might be wrong.
SG-1 never becomes multinational.
Not SG-1, but the SGC. They start letting
Oh yeah, no,
other
it's
nations.
multinational, but like there's the foreign influence is definitely pushed to the side and not really discussed. Besides the political implications.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's nuts.
So this is the second time that we get a hint that he has a troubled past.
Yeah. Never get tired of that. Is Jack running the SGC at this point?
Yeah, he's
Sick.
a brigadier general, I think. He's a 1-star general in the Air Force.
Gotcha. I'm sure this won't be a problem later. Oh, do the thing. Give us the thing. Mm. Do the thing where you touch the event horizon. Oh, no. Hell yeah!
Yeah, I love the new graphic.
Yeah, it's great.
I also enjoy that the gate is recognizable but distinct.
It's a perfect little visual upgrade. I mean, I love the original mechanical gate, and
Mm-hmm.
it's perfect. They're both perfect. They're just great. It's fine that it's different. They needed to update it. That's fine, and they did just enough.
I love that if you know that Atlantis is underwater, you can see like the fact that there's green tint outside of all the glass, and there's implications for it.
Yeah.
Implications of it, I should say. And yet, if you don't know that, then it still comes as a surprise later, right?
Yeah. 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 It's a big one.
Well, yeah, you got to share it with the whole expedition.
True.
Also, one subtle thing that I didn't really notice until like several watchings is the fact that behind the gate is a cutout of the central spire.
Mm. Another reason for the gate update, they might have, after 10 years of shooting, or at this point, 5 years of shooting SG-1?
Yeah, it was about 6 seasons in.
6 years. Perhaps there is a little bit of headache associated with the all the motion contained in the gate, the Stargate prop, and so they thought, what if we just digitized it?
Well, I think part of it was also a definite technological split, right?
Yeah, sure, sure, sure. I mean, it's motivated. It's motivated by the lore, but I'm sure that the prop team was like, what if there was less movement on the piece?
Yeah.
Probably.
I think you and me have discussed this previously, but I'll bring it up for the podcast. I think that um, Stargate Atlantis represents more science fantasy than hard science fiction.
Yes,
that SG-1 does.
It's evident in their costuming even.
Yeah. But I also view Atlantis as kind of a streamlining of the Stargate formula, right? There are a lot of stuff that they started doing in SG-1 that, maybe, it's kind of kept around because that's just how a Stargate episode goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
As with this, they're allowed to explore a little bit more because it's a different series, right? They need similar kind of character archetypes, but, like, okay, yes.
There you go.
O'Neill and Shepard are somewhat equivalent, right?
Somewhat, yeah.
But they're two definite, distinct characters, right? I love the double entendre of Fed there.
Mm-hmm. Little foreshadowing. Oh, Nakoda.
I love how they start with this formality and then immediately just get rid of it, which is a good update to the series.
Yeah. She's like, Rodney, come on.
Just dial the damn thing.
Not that I don't love all of the ritual and accoutrement and
I mean, yeah, and
the militaristic,
again, like I was mentioning earlier, I think
streamlining.
that there's a lot of streamlining you can do in this because it's not expected, right? SG-1 started the whole encoding and lock thing because the movie did it,
right? There's a degree of separation here that gives them some freedom.
Yeah, it gives them some creative freedom to do things that they couldn't do with SG-1, like the fact that they're not like they're still in dire straits when the planet gets attacked, but that it's not Earth, right? It gives a different sense of direness to it, right?
Yeah, it's an escalation. They're out here alone, for sure.
It also separates it from a lot of the, for lack of a better term, politics that are in SG-1.
Yeah. Which is an interesting element of it. Again, none of these things that you're saying, to me, and I don't think you feel this way either, are bad, but it's good that there's a further, that it's distinct, that this is different, that this is exploring different things.
It's not just SG-2.
Yeah. Well, now SG-2 is just the second SG team. I mean, we met them. Although we don't usually hang out with SG-3 for whatever reason.
I think that's because SG-3 is entirely composed of Marines, so they're used as a backup unit.
Oh, yeah.
Also, it might be like SEAL Team 6.
True.
The military does not number things sequentially. So, like, by saying SEAL Team 6, it makes your enemy thinks that there are 6 SEAL teams out there when there could only be 2.
Yeah, there are, in fact, much fewer than 6. I've seen that guy before.
Best character moment is Holling stands up and is like 2 feet taller than Robert Patrick, so he points his gun at him.
He's like,
This series has a lot of hand wavium, and I'm fully willing to give them that, including the everybody speaks English bullshit.
Well, the pilot of SG-1 had Daniel translating, and then from that point onward, they were like, no.
Well, but no one here would, like, for example, they would be speaking a derivative of ancient, right? Nobody here speaks ancient.
Yeah,
right?
No, it would be over, yeah. It's just, again, it's streamlining. SG-1 did that first. When they first go to Chulak, they're doing the whole Arish. Oh, that means he wants us to choose. They're doing the whole Daniel Jackson translation thing, but they do away with it pretty quickly and just make everyone speak English. I think
because you kind of have to justify, besides the whole revenge of his wife thing, why the hell Daniel is there.
Yeah.
Our first introduction to the Wraith is via a child's game.
Mm-hmm.
There's your Star Wars reference.
Nice. Oh shit, they've got oh fuck. What are those rocket launchers? It'll come to me, or it won't. Taylor. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Some of the things I love throughout the series is all of the hints that the Athosians are much more advanced than they claim to be. Right, or they present as, right? You've got a lot of metal work, right? A lot of complicated metal work. You've got it's sewn into their clothing and that sort of stuff. And later on, we'll see the detail that annoys the living hell out of me the most about this series.
I like how everyone's like those close-ups of everyone not being able to help but kind of be endeared to Shepard.
Yeah.
I like that there's like a balance, that they're not just like totally succumbing to mysticism, that's so easy to do with like quote unquote primitive cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, it's a belief some has.
I mean, I think, it's the key thing for a lot of Stargate is that when people have like superstitions or stuff, it's usually backed up by something, practical. It's like,
True.
In SG-1, every civilization that's like, oh, we don't go to the gate because that's where the gods come from and they kill us and stuff. It's like that actually happens.
That 100% happens. The gold come through there. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. And when they warn SG-1 not to do something and they're like, oh, you're just being superstitious. And then there's truth to it every time.
Or oh wait, no, it's later on in this series. There's a subversion of that where this guy's like, yeah, you don't go down in the catacombs. It's dangerous. And I think it's McKay goes, oh, what, is a ghost going to kill me or something? He's like, no, the ground is prone to earthquakes and you might get trapped in a cave-in.
And then I bet McKay like does some mouth movements and looks around a little bit. Does his little awkward micro expressions.
Okay, here was an accidental scene that I love to death. Joe Flanagan just completely biffed that. But it's amazing. So in character.
It's perfect, yeah, and he recovered quickly.
Okay. Taylor's lighter is a
Whoa.
fucking particle beam.
What did she just say? That was
Uh,
sick.
we mastered fire long ago.
Yeah, that was sick. That was
And
so cool.
that lighter is never brought up ever again.
Son of a bitch.
It it annoys
Damn
the
it.
living shit out of me because it's like, okay, hold on.
So that's what you were talking
The
about earlier, the
Athosians, yeah, the Athosians obviously have an advanced technology, and after they're brought back to Atlantis, spoiler for the rest of the episode,
Yeah, I
you'd think
remember
that
that. I remember that.
they would share that kind of technology, right? But
Yeah.
it's never brought up ever again,
Yeah.
and it's like, I'm sorry, but I feel as though particle beam technology is something that Atlantis would be interested in.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that Shepard is smart enough to tell McKay about that.
Yeah, that's a really weird. Wow.
I love how these diagrams look very much like the the Sagan plate
Sagan
on
Institute.
yeah
Yeah. The like
on
simplified
Voyager.
minimalist.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I love how the Wraith fighters sound.
mm-hmm.
It's
That's
awful.
another thing about this series is that everything is designed to go through the gate.
Yes. Those are really well lit elements. There's just enough light on them. Again,
Mm-hmm.
working within your limitations.
Yeah.
Oof.
And here we're introduced to the Wraith mind manipulation techniques.
Yeah. Who just got scooped up? The big guy who we were first introduced to, and who
Yeah,
else?
Halling and a couple of other Athosians.
Damn. Damn, I totally forgot that was part of their deal.
I mean,
Oh shit.
after the first couple of episodes, the Wraith just kind of give up on it because it's not doing anything for him.
Fair.
I mean, like, no offense, but your P90 is not taking down a spaceship.
No. That might.
Yeah, the
Is
missile
it a
might.
law? It's a law. I think that's it. Ooh.
No, I think the law is a simpler
Yeah, you're right.
mechanism.
The law is smaller. I don't know what the fuck.
Yeah, that rocket launcher is an AT-4.
That's it. Thank you. I know the actor's name is Rainbow Sun Franks. What is the character's name?
Lieutenant Ford.
Ford. Yeah. Thank you. Oh shit. That's so good.
This is a detail that I like because it shows very early on that people in this galaxy have a lot more knowledge about
The Stargates.
the
Yeah.
Stargate and how it works, and they're used to trading with other people.
Yes.
And it it's another thing towards that separation between SG-1 and Atlantis.
Yes. Agreed. It's not a mystical ring to all of them.
Well, I mean, it still has reverence to them. Like,
No, but I'm saying something. It's just like,
it has a different religious meaning.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's also a more practical object.
And it's not just a thing that the Goa'uld come through, so they don't avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yes. Hell yes.
How to spend your entire effects budget in 2 shots. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it's
they
worth
use it in
it.
the intro forever, so.
I mean, it's a common thing. Like in SG1 in Atlantis, always before the season finale,
Oh,
there's a clip show, and you know it's just because we don't have to spend money on this episode, so we can spend it on the finale.
yeah. And then that tidal wave decimates the coastal population of this world. Hell yeah.
One little line that gives you the idea that Shepard is not just a meathead.
Right. That's good. That's very snappy, efficient storytelling right there.
Of course, in a later episode, he'll say he could have been in Mensa, but he didn't like turn in his test. Which, I mean, is less elegant storytelling.
That's true.
Solid logic, John.
Hell yeah. I love my goth space vampires.
It's just a great way to just establish the race physical presence.
Yeah. Yeah. He just tossed that guy. I love the muscle the their masks.
Yeah. I believe they're the warriors, and then the unmasked ones are the drones.
Hmm.
I can't remember. There's some distinction there.
Hmm.
It's not worth it though, which is despite having viewed this episode and the season and the series several times, I still can't remember the words that are used.
Hmm.
Here's another thing that I forgot was introduced in this episode is space gates.
Hmm. Oh. Damn. Lost that mouth forever. Hell yeah. He tries to call them, well, no, our viewers have seen this before. I love what they try to call them, and the shepherd's like, this little thing? No. And then he
No.
gives them the name that sticks.
Yeah. Um, every time they try and name something, it's usually McKay who tries to give it a name, and then Shepard's like, no, that's dumb, and then gives it another name.
And
And
then
the
that one
second
sticks.
one sticks.
Yes.
You're not going to ask about the giant mouth on its hand?
Yeah, she's convinced. Classic. The McKay cutoff. Oh, this sparks joy. Here we go. Hell yeah. Oh yeah, the remote dialing. That's also a really useful thing. That's good shit. Also, I love how simple and elegant the puddle jumpers are designed.
Hmm.
Just little fucking circular wedges. That's it. Decent, man. Decent shit. It's like the room of requirement.
Hmm.
Just like start spitting things out.
You know, if this were like
Worth
produced
a try.
10, 20 years before this,
Hmm.
it would have had a voice,
Oh yeah,
which
yeah.
I
I'm
think would
so
have
glad
ruined
it
the
doesn't.
moment. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
have you seen this child?
Have you seen this boy? Have you ever seen Wayne's World 2?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
They
The
bring him back just to pull Wayne over and do that bit where it's like, "Have you seen this boy?" And then Mike Myers just like screams at the camera and drives off.
it's an excellent excuse to play Time Machine by Ozzy.
Mm.
Ah,
Oh,
generic gun cocking noise.
yeah. Yeah, gun. The Stargate movie, man, worst
Oh,
offender I've ever seen for
it's just
too many gun racking sounds.
it's Gus Johnson movie shotgun level
Yes.
of absurd.
Man, it's really unfortunate that he turned out to be kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah. You know those creatures that you like so much from the Stargate movie?
Oh
Uh,
my god!
they're in all three series. It's never explained. I
That's
mean, obviously, but it's just kind of an interesting visual reference.
that's great. I'm sure it's just a running like
Oh
either
yeah.
it was just in the MGM Studios place and they're like, "Oh yeah, let's throw this in,"
Oh
or
no, no,
maybe
no,
it's
no. The director. I was listening to the commentary. The director, I think it's Martin Wood,
mm-hmm.
um, was just like, yeah.
Ooh,
I mean, it was just kind of sitting in a prop closet. So
nice.
it's in all three series up to this. So it was in the original Stargate, then it was in SG-1, and now it's.
Yeah. Man, I haven't seen it in SG-1 yet, I don't think, but maybe I
I
missed it.
think they show up very briefly.
Gotcha.
But
That's
like
great. I
it's
love that
not
guy.
like a focus kind of thing.
Yeah, 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 just like that. Just prop cameo. Also, female wraith, like gross, obviously, but kind of in like a oh no, what's she gonna do to me kind of way. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Ford just wants to name shit, and I love that for
We'll
him.
name it later. That's unwise. That was a great dramatic turn. Nice. Killer line.
I love for how much Sumner like postures is like, I'll take on the entire gold army.
Yeah.
Like he's just like, wait, you eat people?
Yeah. Oh. Oh. Jesus.
This is a good introduction to the healing factor that we saw
Mm.
discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm. Oh shit. Oh, this is gorier than SG-1. Hell yeah.
That is not an explanation for it, and you know it. How many could that be? 1, 2 dozen?
Yeah. Christ. They're such a good enemy.
Throughout the series, just the chemistry between all of the different people on the SG team,
Mm-hmm.
it it's a great group drama, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. There's all the different color grading on different planets and the Stargate shows. It's
Mm.
interesting. I'll be taking this. Sick. I think they put that in the intro.
You know, they know that they have a limited amount of ammo, and they just like burn through so much of it in this first 2 episodes.
It's fine.
I know, it's just
They brought a reloading kit.
yeah, right.
A bunch of gunpowder.
Yeah, they're collecting all their brass, right?
Yeah. You saw them police the brass, right? Oh, is this about to be the end of part 1? Is that what they were about to do?
No, we're actually almost towards the end of the Rising episode 1 and 2. The capture is the halfway point.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay, that strategy is beautiful because the reason that Shepard would know that is because Shepard was deployed to the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they used to shoot down stealth ships.
Oh.
And I think it actually, the Vietnamese also did it during Vietnam. Basically, the idea is that if you're not accurate enough to shoot either a fast moving or a stealth plane or anything like that,
right,
what you do is you identify the high value target. I think it's called like box bombardment or something like that. Basically, you draw a box in the sky, everybody shoots into that box. So there's no good approach to take out that bridge or that factory or whatever without running through the enemy anti-air.
Yeah, okay.
Which is exactly the strategy that he's explaining here.
Oh, you had to use 3 of them? Ooh. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Hell yeah. We did it.
Fun fact about this set. So you're a fan of the Blade movies, right?
I have not seen one of them. I would.
This is the set from Blade Trinity.
No shit.
The vampire lair at the end.
Huh. Oh, there's the top that she always wears.
I love the awkward what the hell do I do right now?
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice inversion of the handshake trope.
Yeah, where they always shake hands with people and they're like, what?
Yeah. Also, we're about to get to my favorite Carson line from the entire series.
Your favorite what?
My favorite Carson Beckett line from the entire series. Yeah, I just love that line. How much far out can you get? Like
that's good. Nice. I will say there's a little bit more. SG-1 does a pretty good job of staying away from moments where it's like this line is overwhelmingly scripted to be plucky, and like that whole exchange was just to come into this sweeping zoom out, right?
Yeah.
Like it was just made to do that and to wrap up the episode. I feel like that happens pretty rarely in SG-1.
Yeah. I mean, SG-1 doesn't suffer. Yeah, I mean, SG-1 doesn't suffer as much from people having dialogue that's way too clever for them.
Yeah.
Right. Where everybody's just like on top of it 24/7.
Yeah.
All right, so that is the end of Rising Part 1 and 2, the pilot
what a
episode.
Ride.
Yeah. It's essentially just a Stargate movie.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Let's go over our favorite moments of the episode.
Everything is pretty elegantly, everything and every concept, every character is pretty elegantly introduced very, very quickly. You have, select members of SG-1 to sort of pass the torch. You've got Daniel Jackson and you've got General O'Neill now. And then the reintroduction for people who have watched SG-1, introduction for people who have not, of some of the ancient technology, the drones, and the fact that some people have to have the gene to operate the ancient equipment and stuff, and all of that. And also I was remarking on how this is a very dated show at this point, but the visual effects for the most part are holding up pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be a lot of my angle is cinematography, VFX. That's more my bag, but like I was really impressed seeing how it was a step up from SG-1, and it was and the detail on the sets too, all of the ancient flourishes and the fact that it all.
Yeah, the fun fact, and I don't have the translation in front of me, and I knew it at one point, but the stairs have ancient writing, right, on each of them.
Yes, I noticed that. Yes.
And that it actually does spell out a message. It's essentially something like "Welcome to Atlantis."
Man, where's Daniel Jackson when you need him?
Right? Well, it's just a derivation of an old Latin script.
It's always derivation. It's always a derivation of something.
Yeah.
Take a drink every time Daniel Jackson says derivation in SG-1.
No, if you want to die from alcohol poisoning, watch SG-1 and take a drink every time Daniel Jackson adjusts his glasses.
Oh no! Also, you will die every time he draws out a word. One of the most quintessential examples is in the pilot episode of SG-1. This is a tangent, I realize. We'll get back. He's being told he's not going on the team. That Jackson, we need you to stay here, and he goes, no.
Yeah.
Like that perfectly sets up how he like softly but firmly disagrees with people. I love it so much.
It's a very I have a PhD way of disagreeing with people.
Yes, you're right. That's exactly what it is. It's a little bit very academic. I love it. But anyway, we're talking about Atlantis. Come on, stay focused.
Back to Atlantis. I think just the sheer amount of stuff. Like I tried to keep a list of stuff that's introduced, and it's practically a page long. Because I mean, not only does this two-parter, okay, in an hour and a half, they establish not only basically the entirety of what a Stargate is, who the ancients are, all that stuff. They also have to introduce the Wraith. They introduce darts, puddle jumpers, everything that will, from this point on, be staples of the series are introduced pretty much in episode 1.
Yeah.
Right.
The ancient the handheld device, the
life science detector, everything.
Yeah.
Like, essentially, until the introduction of Ronan Dex, every major player on the Atlantis base has been introduced. Right.
That's pretty incredible that it didn't seem scattered or forced, and they'd managed to do that. Honestly,
I think it's mainly because the narrative keeps going. Right. It doesn't stop.
It's very well paced. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't ever stop and be like, okay, here's Rodney McKay. He's important because he's a scientist. It's like, this is Dr. McKay. He's figuring all this stuff out. He's telling us why we can't do this. Oh, he must be the science guy, right?
Yeah, true.
There's a lot of stuff that relies on understanding that the audience is going to get some things.
Yeah, it's trusting of its audience. You're right. That's not to say that there's no out-and-out exposition. There's a little bit, like we talked about, between Daniel Jackson and...
room. That's nothing but exposition.
There's a word for that, but yeah, there's being addressed directly by the ancients. Like, I don't know. I guess the Deus Ex Machina of exposition is literally just being told the history by a hologram of a character. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's. There's just, you're introducing the Athosians, you're introducing the Wraith, you're introducing all these things. And it doesn't feel forced. It gets into enough depth to the point where it's like, okay, you know how these things work. And I think one of the problems with sci-fi in general, especially sci-fi fans, is that they want a hard explanation for everything, right?
Yeah.
It's how many arguments have you heard where it's like, well, yeah, but such and such, if it's like the Harry Potter fandom, for example, it's like, well, yeah, but how does this thing work? Or how does, like in other shows, you'll see stuff like, oh, this has an invisibility effect. Well, why does it affect your clothes? And, it's like all this.
Sure. All these. Yeah.
Little bits. And I think Stargate Atlantis has plenty of those moments. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the key things is that you have to accept some level of hand wavium, right?
That's just the principle of the suspension of your disbelief. I mean, that's a necessary element to all visual media.
I think that Stargate, compared to a lot of other media, makes at least an attempt to be like, here's a rough explanation of how this works.
That's true. I remember distinctly the first rewatch I did, since my childhood of the series. I mentioned that I watched SG-1 leading into Atlantis and went back and forth between the two and didn't quite finish. But I was the person I was watching it with at the time. We would always I can't even tell you how many times this happened. It eventually became an inside joke between the two of us, where something would happen in the show, and we would think it was like some sort of plot hole. We would look at that and be like, now, wait a minute, how... They need to explain that. How does that work? And sometimes before we even finished talking about it, they would offer the explanation. But always before the end of the episode, they would give us just enough to explain why it worked differently in the past, or what this new technology, whatever, what have you, why it was working the way that it was. Every single time, they would give it to us. And we would just laugh and be like, okay, there you go.
And a lot of those explanations are really hand wavy. For example, it's like, oh, well, that's just an effect of Naquadah. Or
right.
My favorite is, and this is rampant in SG-1 and a little bit in Atlantis. But in Atlantis, they don't focus on the gate as much. But one of the common things is, oh, that's just a principle of wormhole physics. Like, you can't go check that. right?
Yeah. That's
they're just like,
until
oh
we
yeah,
have
no,
them.
it shuts off after 38 minutes. It's one of the immutable laws of wormhole physics.
Yeah, sure. But they
Right,
give
and
it to you, you know.
yeah, they give you some like justification for
Some
why
might
things
say
are
it's
the way they are.
lampshading, but
It is. It's 90% lampshading. I mean, this is the series that literally had episodes about a fake TV series that was lampooning itself.
oh yes, what's it called?
Okay,
Wormhole
yeah,
Extreme.
Wormhole Extreme.
Yes, those episodes were so good.
I know, but yeah, it's like the series takes itself as seriously as it needs to,
It
right?
really is perfect.
And I
Yeah.
think it also again strikes a good balance between characters being witty and having that kind of ribbing back and forth without being like, oh, we're just gonna be a comedy now, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's not like Star Trek levels of absolutely serious, right?
Yeah.
Where like everybody is trying to like play it like this high drama. It's got the characters are realistic, right? It's written
Yeah.
well.
And also, this is again because we're just getting started here on Atlantis. Some of this more general discussion is going to have to fall on SG1 because I'm watching it right now and I'm halfway through the season
That's
2.
fine.
But there are playful moments where the score will go. There'll be some like piccolos and shit going, beep-a-loo, like those little plucky moments. But there's also a lot of rawness from the very beginning that is present in SG1 that a lot of sci-fi shies away from. Star Trek: The Next Generation, there's a bit here and there, but really the only true raw moment is that I recall is like there are four lights, right?
Yeah.
Like where you really see an actor reach down and give you something like that. And that happens pretty, here and there in SG1 at least, where you see, like, for example, Sam's father straight up tells her that he has cancer, and then, like, wants her to tell him what she's actually doing, or wants her to pursue being an astronaut,
Yeah, being an
she can't tell him, and then he's like, well, and then he just walks the fuck out of the room, and she's like, Dad, and she's like tearing up, and it's really, I'm always impressed by the actors in this, dumb sci-fi show from the '90s. You get some really incredible performances that are just unexpected. I think. I'm not saying they're Oscar worthy, but they're much more proficient than they needed to be.
You expect like the leading man, for example, like Star Trek basically picked Shakespearean actors for years, right?
Yeah,
it's
from
like
the very beginning.
Your main people are these high level classically trained kind of people, right? Mm-hmm. And I think part of the problem is basically they end up casting really high marks for one or two people, right, are the main cast, and then everybody else is, who could we convince for scale pay to put them in 6 pounds of makeup, right?
Yeah.
And not to say that there isn't stuff like that going on here, right?
Sure.
But for example, Joe Flanagan before Stargate had done no sci-fi.
Sure. Yeah.
He'd done some courtroom dramas, some other stuff, right? Before he was on Stargate, Dave Hewlett did The Cube and a couple other B horror movies, right? So I mean, it's not that they're necessarily inexperienced, but I think because they weren't, there isn't any standout star, right? I guess you could say Robert Patrick or in this, or Richard Dean Anderson in SG1.
Sure. Yeah. He was MacGyver. Robert Patrick was a Terminator. Those were huge things.
Yeah. I mean, getting rid of Robert Patrick was the right maneuver for the series. I think he would have been good in the series, but I think for this episode, you needed someone like him to play Colonel Sumner. Right?
Yeah, it was perfect casting, and it made sense to give that initial star power, and then he stepped aside.
I mean, it's a little bit of a rug pull to introduce him and then take him away, I think.
Sure, yeah.
But I think it serves the series better, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't want Stargate Atlantis to be thought of as a Robert Patrick vehicle.
Yeah, I mean it
would have been fine, I'm sure. But.
I mean, yeah, I think they could have pulled it off. But what I'm saying is, I think his death is an emotional underpinning for a lot of other events in the series, right?
Yeah,
and it gives us an idea of who Shepard is because we hear about, he's got a bad record, and he's got a black mark, that thing in Afghanistan.
And, yeah, it's all very
which is
like,
it's a backstory we've heard a million times, right?
Yeah. It's trite.
I was disobeying orders, but it was to save my comrades, kind of thing. But we don't. It really hits home in the moment where he kills Sumner, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is someone who knows that doing quote unquote the right thing isn't always the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
That he sees the larger picture than just what's right in front of him. And I think that's an important moment for Shepard. And it sets up a lot of stuff so that can be brought back up, so that we can be given the risk of Shepard being taken off the expedition, or, this, that, or the other thing. It also gives us a little bit of emotional legitimacy when we see Shepard doing things that might be a little bit off book, right? Just as we saw Richard Dean Anderson throughout the entirety of SG-1 do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right?
They were setting up earlier that Robert Patrick and Dr. Weir, were going to be butting heads.
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Sumner, I should say, and Dr. Weir were we're going to butt heads, and there might be there didn't seem to be a clear delineation of power, or where the leadership was centralized, or whether they were going to be able to share it. And then he died, but there was initially a similar conflict that arose between Weir and Shepard.
Yeah, but so I think it's a lot less antagonistic between Shepard and Weir.
Yeah, she says, "I hear you, now hear me," and he does seem to a little bit. He kind of storms out of the scene, but there's potential for that, but it seems to be starting off on a better foot, and that's important, I think. Yeah,
and I think getting relatively unknown actors in sci-fi is a good thing, especially when you're dealing with something like Atlantis, which turns into okay, you get Richard Dean Anderson to do SG-1 because you need some star power to replace Kurt Russell. Right. You need some star power to get the series off the starting blocks, right? And let's be honest, Richard Dean Anderson's performance as Jack O'Neill is top notch. He is just the right guy for that.
It's incredible, and there are also all those moments where, like, he gets. We're talking too much about SG-1, but there are moments where he gets infected by a thing and he has to do creature acting and various things, and he commits. I'm really astounded at the level of his performance and the because he's MacGyver. He was in this 80s action show. You'd think he would be sufficient, but he really blew certain moments out of the water.
I think bringing it back to Atlantis, I think the reason why you need a whole bunch of unknown actors, or relatively unknown, right? I'm not saying these people did nothing before they got on Stargate Atlantis, but is because, as SG-1 showed, it's really an ensemble piece. Yes, there are main actors, right? So, obviously in SG-1, you've got SG-1, right? They're in every episode. Okay. But I think, so there's a small ensemble by the fact that there's a team that you're following, right? But I think Atlantis expands that, right? Because now it's almost as though General Hammond joined SG-1, right? When we're talking about equivalent kind of party size.
Yeah.
Because not only do you have the main four, you also have Dr. Weir. And then later on, Peter's in there as kind of the Walter stand-in, right? But then you get Zelenka, right?
Right. Yes. He's great.
Almost was going to be Kavanaugh, but nobody likes Kavanaugh. So
yeah, I don't even remember who that is.
When you see him, you remember him.
Okay.
But
is he the one? Is he the one who ends up when Colonel Mayborn is no longer really in the picture, fulfilling that antagonistic political role?
No. He Kavanaugh is completely Atlantis.
Okay.
Kavanaugh's the scientist with a ponytail.
I thought that Zelenka had a ponytail.
No. Zelenka is the Czech scientist.
Well, yeah, I knew he was Czech, but I thought he had a ponytail. No, Kavanaugh. Oh, yeah, he's just kind of a douche. Yeah, he's like he's playing the character McKay was first playing in
essentially,
SG-1. Yeah.
And I mean, he's got some points, but we'll get to that when Kavanaugh's on screen.
Right.
But
sure.
yeah, no, like it truly does become a much more ensemble cast, I think, in Atlantis. And I think part of that is having a lot of, actors who nobody's kind of too big for their britches, right?
Yeah.
You don't have somebody who's like, I'll be in my trailer. You have what ends up happening in a lot of like these sci-fi series where you've got actors on a stage for 16 hours a day. And they all just kind of hang out and just, laugh around and joke with each other, and they build camaraderie that shows up in the show.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Building real chemistry. Sure.
Because like all of the department heads throughout the entirety of Stargate Atlantis are, they're all constant characters. It's not like with like, for example, Dr. Frasier in SG-1, right? We would see Dr. Frasier, and we knew Dr. Frasier. Dr. Frasier had a whole bunch of, character growth moments and everything.
Yes.
And was a mainstay character, but really was never more than a recurring character. As we're in Atlantis.
That's true. That's true.
Right? Dr. Beckett, while fulfilling that same kind of role emotionally,
right,
ends up being much more of a main character.
Yeah,
right?
Okay, that's fair.
It's much more of a slice of life in Atlantis compared to SG-1, which is more of a series of action scenes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And not to say that either of those are wrong, or not to say that Atlantis doesn't have action, but like Atlantis is, let's talk about the day-to-day, and occasionally everything's going to die. Right. As where SG-1 is like, we're going to go from disaster to disaster, and we're going to avert it by the skin of our teeth. And both of those are interesting choices. But I think I really like Stargate Atlantis' aspect where you really get to know these characters. You really get to, understand them. Right.
And you know what? While the Cheyenne Mountain Complex is sort of a character in and of itself in SG-1, kind of maybe it becomes, you form an affinity to this place. I feel like Atlantis itself becomes a character in Stargate Atlantis, because there are so many episodes, if I recall, it's been a long time, that are about various idiosyncrasies of the city.
You spend more of your time in the base, right?
Yeah.
Because Cheyenne Mountain's pretty boring. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's true.
It's your standard bunker. There's the gate room, there's the conference room.
Sometimes they have lockdown, and you get to see like the 2-foot thick doors swing closed.
Yeah. But like Atlantis is, they can have entire episodes in Atlantis where they go to parts where they haven't explored and they find some weird thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that can be an interesting episode. I think that is what you were talking about. You get this character of the place that they're in. You get much more attached to it, right? It becomes a home. It's the same effect that I think happened with Firefly, which is why a lot of people like Firefly. Now, love Firefly, hate Firefly. We could be here all day if we talked about it. But one of the things that made Firefly, I think, as effective as it did is the way the set was built, right? Because they basically had to recreate the entirety of Serenity, right? Which what would end up happening is that, the cast would, between takes, relax inside another part of the set because it was set up as a lounge, as a living room kind of thing, right?
Yeah, as it's supposed to be a lived-in ship. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you get that same feel of kind of lived in and, this camaraderie and all that from Stargate Atlantis. Right.
Yeah.
Weir's office is decorated by Weir, and you can tell that. And you've got, eventually, Shepard's room, right? With the Johnny Cash poster and, all of his stuff.
Nice.
I mean, after later on when they can actually get resupplied, right?
Sure. Spoilers.
That's actually, spoilers. That's actually an interesting moment. And we'll talk about it more when we get there, because I think it does a lot of things right when they allow for that level of personalization.
Yes. Yeah. And when you get to see the living quarters, the living space of the people, that adds a lot. Like they did it in an episode when in SG-1 where he goes back to his home because it's not O'Neill, but it's an alien who is.
I mean, we see O'Neill's lake house a couple of times.
That's true, and he's fishing and stuff.
That's almost all we ever see, right?
Yeah, it's not enough. It's not. Yeah, I mean, that show's great. It's sufficient, but and there's also something that happens in Atlantis. It happened in this episode a bit where I personally love, like I rarely get to experience this, but like a balmy seaside night, like just thinking about that, it evokes like the feelings of relaxation of being on vacation and just being content, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only time I experience that. And when they step out onto the balcony and their hair's ruffling a little bit and you can hear the waves, I'm like, fuck yes. Like I can almost feel it. And that's and that adds to the characterization of this place that like there's intense danger, but it's also beautiful.
Yeah.
You're just like floating on the surface of this endless ocean.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Unless you have any other things that you want to talk about.
We covered the pacing. We covered a lot of the things that were introduced. I think one of the strengths is also that it's very clearly, we talked about the ways in which it delineates itself from SG-1, and I think that's why it was so readily accepted. Is like, one, SG-1 was still running, so it wasn't this feeling of, oh no, this is the replacement. Two, there are some similarities from some of the characters to the old team, but not many. And it's very clearly departing from the original series in very specific, very small ways. And I think that's all to its benefit, that it's like, hey, we're not replacing your beloved Stargate, but we're doing this in addition to it, and we're bringing in something new. And I think that the balance there is really, really well done. And I also really like the design motif of the Ancients. And there wasn't happening much in this one, but how they're always like, McKay and Zelenka are like working on some panel inside the wall of the city, and there's just all these crystal panels in it and shit. And I just love all of the motifs and stuff.
Yeah, I think the other interesting visual differences between the Wraith and the Ancients, where the Ancients are angular and the Wraith are very organic.
Yes.
That's a difference you see in a lot of sci-fi, where one side's the technological side, the other side's the organic side.
Right.
I think Atlantis does it very well. Right?
It does. Yeah, the design of all the Wraith stuff is wild.
Just the attention to detail, the set design, the props, everything feels like it fits. Nothing really feels out of place, and I love that.
And so much of it, I mean, you mentioned that the set of Atlantis is actually refactored from Blade Trinity.
Well, some parts of it. They pieced that thing together from 12 different places.
Okay. But you're right, there is that cohesion, and I think all of it is made bespoke, because Stargate was a very successful franchise at this point. I mean, this was right in the middle of SG-1, so it had to be. They had some money to play with, I think.
Some money, not a lot, but
sure. But
it's still a sci-fi series, right? Like,
true. But like the Wraith costuming and technology. I mean, I'm sure someone will prove me wrong and say, no. If you look at this big Wraith bruiser guy, his armor plate is actually from this old movie from the 70s, and it's all recycled. Yeah, but that's just a film industry. But it all looks right.
It's all cohesive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also like the introduction of the idea that the Wraith use stunners, which makes sense for them as a species.
Yeah.
And also will unlock several different narrative opportunities, right? Because obviously you can't get hit with a staff blast, right?
Yeah.
From a staff weapon in SG-1. Right. And I mean, people have gotten shot by those and survived. Not saying they don't, but
there's just always happened to be a sarcophagus in that episode.
Yeah, right. Or somebody is wearing the new armor or whatever,
Sure.
But the stunners allow a lot more, interesting ways to play with characters and characters getting injured, I think, and we'll see that as the seasons go on. Everything is tightly tuned to align with what's going on and who's using it and what technology they use and their architectural style and everything. So I think that'll do it for episode 1 of the Iratus Complication.
Sick. That was great. That was such a good time.
If you do happen to be listening to this, please, rate, comment, and give us all that good engagement on whatever platform you're listening to us on.